When I was younger, I used to go to a local car boot sale every weekend. I'd be given a few quid and then let loose to find something to take home. With the advent of sites like Gumtree and stuff, they don't seem to be around anymore, but they were a free-for-all. There was the usual stalls filled with people's second-hand clothes and bric-a-brac they wanted rid of, but then there were the people who came with specialist stuff. A local shop owner who flogged his homemade candy and shortbread. There was this one woman who sold a massive assortment of freaky gardening ornaments who I used to buy stone skulls off of. And then there was the people who sold VHS tapes. They weren't always official copies, but they were cheap and plentiful. In the same vein of the video store, all you had to go on was what the box looked like and the stall owner's recommendation. But you couldn't trust them. You could be holding a copy of Battlefield Earth and pickle picking and they'd tell you they were masterpieces. So, one day, I was browsing the videos and came across Dagon. It looked dark, horrifying, and had a cool monster on the back, so I handed over my £2 coin, haggled down from a fiver of course, and I took it home. It's the first VHS I ever remember buying with my own money. And that just shows you how shady this deal was. The guy just handed over a rated 18 gore-soaked horror movie to a 9-year-old for 200 pence. It was a different time.
Room, por favor.
The film is the classic H.P. Lovecraft story Shadow over Innsmouth, but set in Spain, rather than being based on his 1919 short story Dagon. Innsmouth is now in Boca, and everyone has a Spanish accent. They shifted the story here since the production companies that funded it were all based in Spain, but aside from people's names and parts spoken in Spanish, there's nothing decidedly Espanol about it besides them being on holiday in the open. The whole place still looks like a seaside town, and other than the change to modern times, it's a decently faithful adaptation. Even the 1919 short story is based on a man's story during World War II, so my only guess is they just wanted to add some flair and change things up that fans weren't expecting. They'd been trying to make this film since 1985, so by the time 2001 rolled by, they probably just were like, cool, we'll film it anywhere. Dagon is set in the present day and follows Paul, a successful businessman, celebrating a big deal with his girlfriend and another couple on a boat when they hit a rock. Two of them have to stay on the boat while Paul and his girlfriend head for shore and end up in the coastal town of Imboca. And that's where the craziness begins.
Until you came, there have been no sacrifices for a year. Dagon needs her.
Fuck Dagon!
Yes. And the child will be immortal.
I swear to God, I spent so many years thinking this guy was Leywinell. It's uncanny. Paul is fine as a hero, if a little bland and generic. His backstory and the trials he goes through are more interesting than who he actually is as a character. His girlfriend is a mixed bag. She goes through hell, so I couldn't help but feel bad for her, but she's introduced in the worst way. He's just checking stocks and seeing how his company's doing, and she throws his laptop into the sea. I think you're meant to feel he's obsessed with his job, but it just comes off that she's a complete bitch that sent an expensive piece of hardware into the sea.
Hey. Bitch, you better be joking.
The acting ranges from great to awful. The last man in Imboca, played by Francisco Rabal, gives one last terrific performance. He gets an entire sequence to himself, and his gravelly, unique voice really sells us the tragedy that was this town. The first scenes in Imboca are the best part of the movie. The film does a great job showing the creepy, rotten world that these villagers live in. You see glimpses of misshapen silhouettes and weird noises slurping out from behind objects. The first half also contains no music, and it really adds to the lonely, cold atmosphere. Imboca is a quiet and secretive place, and the few people we do meet mostly just stare silently. Part of the reason the first half of this film is so good is because of this heightened tension due to it feeling so real. In real life, violent actions are quick, uncinematic and quiet, and that's exactly how it plays out here. You don't know what's going to happen and don't even have music to go off to know how to feel other than worried. It also allows the fantastic sound design to work its magic. All you hear throughout is rainfall, strange sounds, and frantic whispers. Creature sounds are also awesome. It's like Star Wars levels of freakishly cool.
Dagon!
I really dig the music too. The main theme especially perfectly encapsulates a deep cult-like vibe while showing the aura that Dagon has. The Imbokins themselves are terrifying looking. Their massive bulging eyes and slimy fingers flailing around, it's just disgusting. They're a really good interpretation from the book. The original story has them becoming these amphibian fishmen. Here, it's a whole host of things, with crazy teeth, tentacles everywhere, and it's better for it. They look far scarier, but when you have a guy with 2 giant foam tentacles for arms, it tends to get a little silly. There's also a ton of butt-ugly CGI in this movie. Even for 2001, it looks terrible. And it stands out so much because of the great practical work they pulled off. The famous chase scene from the book is the standout moment here. It's a crazy sequence where the entire town rushes down Paul, starting in this little hotel room, and it's terrific. Again, due to the lack of music, it's panic-inducing. All you have is him frantically trying to escape while hundreds of these screaming things bear down on him. The movie is also mostly shot on handheld cameras, adding to the sense that you're there, voyeuring over all this torment that he's going through. It's a great example of minimalist horror. However, in terms of visual style, that's where the film's lacking. It's a rather boring looking film in terms of framing or colour. As I say, the effects and atmosphere are top notch, but there wasn't any scenes that stood out as something special. It's bog standard camera work. Then, there's just this one moment of serious gore. There's a scene where a man gets his entire face peeled off while alive, and it's one of the most grotesque horror movie deaths you'll ever see. It stands out so much because there really isn't any other over-the-top violence anywhere else in the film.
Are you serious? This is torture.
The movie becomes a bit of a mess halfway through. There's this long drawn-out section where you don't learn anything, and it's yet another scene of having to watch Paul escape, but by this point, you just want some story to cling on to. Eventually it does come back, but it doesn't do a very good job of explaining what's going on. Paul seems to understand how things work, but I remember I mostly just sat back and said, wait, how did he work that out on my first watch? It doesn't help that the climax is chaotic. There's so much going on, and we finally get some more creative visuals, but just as it was getting good, it grinds to a halt. In the original story, the protagonist learns that he himself descended from Innsmouth, and he's destined to slowly turn into one of these grotesque fish people. He goes through a horrendous ordeal trying to come to terms with this and even contemplates suicide. Here, the character's realization, extreme choices, and reluctant acceptance of his fate is shoved into the space of about 2 minutes. It's an abrupt end where you're hit with a ton of exposition in amongst the madness. I think many people will be a bit confused as to what just transpired. With that said, for Lovecraft lovers, this is a must-see. If it had a bigger budget and a bit more style, it could have been something really special, but as it stands, Dagon is still a blast to check out.
Dagon!